Back in June, we celebrated the career of Spike Lee. The amazing director had a new film release on Netflix, The Five Bloods. We highly recommend checking it out. When it came time to pick an older film of his to review, we went back and forth. It would be easy to pick Do the Right Thing or Malcolm X, but there are plenty of reviews out there on those two films. We eventually landed on Clockers for our retro review. You're listening to Cinemajaw Retro Review. I'm Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rive Movie Guy. And on this retro review, we go back to 1995. Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing came out in 1989. Malcolm X, 1992. Two masterpieces, no argument there. For his eighth feature film, Spike Lee casted Harvey Keitel, John Turturro, Mekhi Phifer, and Delroy Lindo. The movie is based on the book Clockers by Richard Price. Now, originally, the film was entered into production with Martin Scorsese attached to direct. He had previously collaborated with Price on his 1986 film, The Color of Money. Scorsese would eventually drop out of production to focus on his passion project, Casino, at which point Spike Lee stepped in to direct and rewrite the script. Scorsese did remain on as a co-producer. Now, on the retro reviews we'd done before, either Matt or I had seen the film we were looking back on. But with Clockers, this was the first time either of us had seen it. How high does it rank on Spike Lee's filmography? We gave it a spin to find out.
Hey, welcome to the show that never ends.
Bartucci, what you got?
We got a black male, dead man, Darrell Adams, 22 years old, is the night manager of this joint. Pop, poppity pop, Darrell goes down, shooter does a Carl Lewis.
Boys, Darrell Adams, the boys.
Hey, Darrell.
I reached in my bag, I pulled out the gun, I was scared, I shot, I ran.
What began as a simple confession
This is still a good, solid, closed by arrest.
became a mystery.
He's never been in trouble before. It was a big mistake.
All you gotta do now is tell me the truth. Man, look, I told you already. The guy jumped out of nowhere. I got scared. Bam! Then I ran.
You mean bam, 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 bam?
What?
4 bullets in the body.
Now, for one man to find the truth,
Something's not right. When I'm working on something, I gotta make it right.
Homicide creeping up.
How you doing, fellas?
another must make a choice
Your brother fessed up. What do you think happened?
Got me.
Ed told me you talked to the homicide cop.
between loyalty,
Can't take it much longer, man.
Maybe you won't have to take it much longer.
family,
I'm gonna try to get you up out of here, okay? This ain't for me, man.
and survival.
Why'd you lie to me, Ronnie?
Am I under arrest or what?
We got the shooter.
You locked up the wrong brother.
First off, let's get the word clockers out of the way. It's a term used for street-level drug dealers. Their boss is Rodney Little, played by Delroy Lindo. Rodney instructs one of the clockers, Strike, played by Mekhi Phifer, to kill another dealer, Darrell Adams, who he believes is stealing from him. Before Strike goes through with it, he stops to see his brother and convince him to do it. We then meet the detectives, Harvey Keitel and John Turturro, on their way to the murder scene. Who ultimately killed Darrell Adams is the question of the movie. Strike's brother ends up confessing to the crime, but Harvey Keitel's character never believes him, so an investigation begins.
Now, what is so effective in Clockers is that Harvey Keitel's character cares about the case. This is one of the main points Spike Lee is trying to make. From the opening of the film, slow jam music playing over pictures of murder scenes of young black men, Spike is showing us how circular the life cycle is of everyone growing up in the hood and around the drugs and violence. The cops, for the most part, don't care who actually pulled the trigger. They stand around the crime scenes making jokes. To them, it's just a way of life and a job they have to do. No one seems to be trying to change the norm. When Keitel's character starts to try and solve the crime and actually figure out the motive here, it takes us through the lives of all involved, and we sadly see how difficult it is to get out of the life of drugs and crime so many are born into. Matt, To me, the main message of Clockers is showing us how cyclical life on the streets can be. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think that cyclical structure to the film is apparent right from the beginning. You mentioned how Spike Lee uses a montage of crime scenes, and it's actually really affecting. It's pretty startling how graphic it is right in the opening moments, and it's played over what's pretty calm of a song, right? But then as the movie progresses, we start to see those characters that were in the beginning montage one by one meet their fate. And yeah, there's also a young boy in this film who is a central character to the whole plot. And I suppose he's sort of a symbol for what Strike is going through, Mekhi Phifer's character. So yeah, yes, I think one of the main points of this movie is how do you break that cycle?
Yeah. And I think the symbolism here that Spike Lee uses that really nailed that home for me too is that Strike, besides getting into this, life of crime and being a clocker selling drugs, his passion on the side is trains. And he has a train set at home that he likes to go and play with. And we all know what a train set does, right? It goes in a giant circle. And so we see him playing with this train set, and it's constantly going around and around. And it comes up a couple of different times in the film. And that symbolizes that life cycle that we're seeing. The young boy who you speak of is going to be in the position of Strike in a matter of 5 years. And
Right.
so we see that constant circle of life going through. And yet he uses the train also at the end of the film because that is one of the final scenes. And this isn't a train that is necessarily going in a circle. It's a train that someone's on and is actually going somewhere.
Right.
And
or so we hope, at least.
exactly. And I think ultimately it's the message that, people can break out of that circle, but the struggle to do it is great.
I want to talk about Harvey Keitel. I want to talk about Delroy Lindo. So let's go with Keitel first, because this is one of the things that you seem to have a handle on that I don't. At the end of the film, Strike is asking Keitel's character, Rocco, why he even cares. It should have been an open and shut case. And even his partner was kind of pushing him, hey, we got the guy. He confessed. The crime is over. Why are you chasing this? And I don't know the answer to that question. Do you? Why did Keitel's character care?
I think that's what brings sort of the emotion to the story, is that these characters don't normally care. When you're asking why does he care, that's going to the surface level question of why would anybody care about these lives on the street?
Yeah.
So that finally he cares, even though I think his original motive is actually that he doesn't like the idea of them getting one over him, past him, I should say, in the sense that there's a crime committed. He thinks it smells a little funny that someone's, taking blame that shouldn't. And he doesn't like the idea that somebody's actually going to sneak something past him. I think that's his original motive. But eventually he becomes sort of the heart and the emotion of the idea of, well, what exactly and why? And let's solve this thing.
Yeah, there's a particularly effective, I guess you'd call it a montage that Spike Lee uses at the end of the film where Harvey Keitel has a monologue, and he's going through this exact thing that we keep bringing up, this cycle of life on the streets and growing up in these projects where one of the only opportunities is selling drugs. And he talks about this character Shorty, Tyrone, who's being drawn into this lifestyle as a young kid and how it's going to affect him. And Spike Lee chooses to actually show some of these scenes. And Keitel is there in the scene, but it's kind of like almost like a dream sequence in a way. This is happening in our imaginations as viewers, if that makes sense. And it's haunting. I think that is the scene of this movie where things are really, truly sort of laid on the table.
I agree. And you also wanted to talk about Delroy Lindo and his performance. Here he was fabulous earlier in The Five Bloods, and another strong performance from him. And I think the story that he tells Strike about his past and how he had to go through sort of that that moment of going to the next level.
Yeah.
And because he done it, he believes that's the right step for Strike as well. So you really feel for these characters in the sense they just don't know any better, because that's what the person in front of them told them that was the next thing to do as well. And obviously, looking at it as an outsider, we realize how sad and unfortunate this whole entire event is, but it is something that happens, in the film and unfortunately in real life.
I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of Delroy Lindo every time I see him. And obviously, Clockers is an older film that we just missed in 95 somehow. Even though I'd seen all the previous works of Spike Lee and most of his subsequent works. I don't know how I missed Clockers. I just did with that cast. I don't know how this one slipped by me. But first of all, I think Delroy Lindo is going to get at least a nomination this year for The Five Bloods for acting. And that's on the screen in Clockers as well. Like, he just has a presence, and he's sort of the heavy in this, or at least the antagonist in a way. Man, every time that guy's on screen, I'm kind of afraid of him. Like, he's got a menacing personality when he wants to. It's just fantastic acting.
Right. I do think, in The Five Bloods, it was a very big and showy performance. And because of his presence on screen, some might say it's almost too much because he's so big. He just has that presence. So it's a very large performance. And here it's sort of toned down, but 100% agree with you. He's just almost intimidating on screen. Somebody I would be afraid of. Guy would just clock me. I don't know.
And I haven't read the book, but I like how Spike Lee, with the rewrites on this, made his character at least somewhat sympathetic in those scenes you're talking about, how he was sort of pushed further down this life of crime by a mentor, and now he's turning it around and doing that to his mentees.
Yeah. Another thing besides just being, the cyclical nature of things that we've talked about is, I think Spike Lee's other message here is that violence is just thrown at us a constant. And one of the ways he shows this is there's a video game used throughout the movie that the youngest character is playing. And the fact that violence, everywhere we look, on television, we're seeing it. In video games, we're seeing it. In movies, we're seeing it. And so
just in the art on the walls, the murals that they walk by every day.
Every day we're seeing the violence. So not only are they have the difficulty of growing up, in unfortunate circumstances with crime all around them, but then the art around them, and art in so many ways is supposed to be an escape. The art around them is just giving them more violence. And I think that is Spike Lee's second message of Clockers.
I agree. That's interesting that you bring that up, man. This is shown in a conversation between the characters on the benches, which is sort of their station for their small time drug ring. They sit on the benches outside of their project building. They're arguing about which rapper is more hardcore, and they're saying, well, so-and-so never killed anybody. He never committed murder. And they're like, well, I just prefer positive rappers. They get into this whole argument. So you're right. That's one of the themes, is just the art being violent. And one of the interesting things about that video game that we see, because we see Spike Lee uses some animation to show us what the graphics might look like, which back in 1995, video games like that just didn't exist. But it's clearly sort of a Grand Theft Auto video game, isn't it?
It really is.
Isn't that weird?
That maybe the makers of Grand Theft Auto could have almost got the idea from watching Clockers. It's that spot on.
It's so spot on. And the funny thing is, I don't even think Grand Theft Auto 1, which is the 2D top-down one where it was really rudimentary, I don't even think that one came out until the early 2000s, maybe 99, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. This was also a film that didn't feature Spike Lee in a main role, but he does appear in what was really amounts to a cameo role.
Yeah, it's a cameo. He pops up at crime scenes as a worker or somebody who just got off of work, drinking a 40 and commenting from the sidelines behind the police tape, on the crimes. It's just kind of a quick little comedic role for him. It was nice to see him pop up.
It was.
Another thing I noticed that it must be discussed is the soundtrack. And anybody who's a fan of 90s hip hop and then slow jams, you called them, Rye, some of the great R&B music, and Spike Lee uses music so well in general, but in this film in particular, because he doesn't make the music match the tone of the emotion, if that makes sense. If we're witnessing something tense and violent, we might be listening to a really calm, slow song. And if we're listening or if we're watching a scene where it's just people hanging out, enjoying the sunshine, we're listening to some harder edged like rap music. I found that really interesting. And also I just really enjoyed listening to all the cool music.
I like movies such as this where when you're watching it, you feel like you're watching a 90s movie.
Oh, so 90s, dude. The fashion.
And everything about this movie feels like the 90s. Like you could put this on and say, yes, this is what it was like in 1995.
Very much so. Absolutely. Brooklyn's come a long way since 1995, man. If I had to pick a small dig for Clockers, and this is minor, it's just that John Turturro is slightly underused. Maybe that's just because when I see John Turturro, I'm ready for a performance, for a John Turturro performance. He gets a few lines. He has a few moments, but they're small, and I think we could have gotten a little more from him.
I agree with you, but we do have to remember that I don't think Turturro was that big of a star in 1995.
Oh, definitely not.
Right? So, yes, in 2020, glasses, we're looking back and saying, boy, they should have gave Turturro a little bit more. But I think he was still up and coming. And when you got Harvey Keitel and Delroy Lindo and Mekhi Phifer, who...
They're the heart of the film.
Yeah, we got to give props to Mekhi Phifer. This was his first role. And it's the starring role. As great as Keitel is and as great as Delroy Lindo is, Mekhi Phifer is excellent as Strike here.
Oh, I loved him too, man. He carries the movie. I like his character in terms of like the little details, and I'm sure these were in the script and in the book, like the Yoo-hoo drink that he's always guzzling, which is causing him stomach problems, and eventually that sort of comes to a head at one point. Yeah, he's just an interesting character. He's obviously got charisma. He's doing bad things, making bad decisions, but at the same time, you kind of can't help liking him because I think he's at heart, he's good, even though he's made all these terrible choices. He's a good man.
Agree. Looking at the filmography of Spike Lee before we hit the record button here, and I was waiting for you, I thought of this question. Let's put Spike Lee's filmography in 3 tiers: top tier, middle tier, and third. Top tier, of course, we're talking the heavy hitters, the Do the Right Things, the Malcolm X's. The bottom tier would be...
Don't say it. Don't say it. You son of a bitch.
Summer of Sam.
Oh, man.
No, I give you a hard time with that. But where would you put Tucker? Sort of top tier, middle tier, bottom tier Spike Lee?
Well, here's the thing with Spike Lee's films and Clockers. And bear in mind, he's also done a few movies that almost don't even feel like Spike Lee films.
I agree. And we got to talk about that.
One example I would throw out there just, off the top of my head is Old Boy, the remake that he directed. That just doesn't seem like a Spike Lee movie. But this one, I would put toward the top of the middle. And there's a few blind spots I have, probably about 4 Spike Lee films I haven't seen, but I've seen most of them. And of the ones I have seen, I'd put this near the top of the middle.
Okay. I'm with you on middle tier Spike Lee for Clockers. And I love the fact that you brought up that Spike Lee directs movies that sometimes don't feel like Spike Lee movies. Clockers does.
Oh, yeah.
Clockers definitely is a Spike Lee movie. So know that going in. I even think a movie that I like, that I've talked about numerous times, Inside Man, about the bank robbery, Inside Job, I should say.
No, it's Inside Man.
What is Inside Man? I think like that is a great movie, but it doesn't feel like it's got Spike Lee's fingerprints all over it as much as, say, something like Clockers does. So I would say this really does feel like a Spike Lee film. It's middle tier for me, Spike Lee, but I would recommend checking this one out.
There's parts of Summer of Sam that definitely feel Spike Lee, like when they talk about New York right in the beginning, where he's like, there's 6 million people in the city of New York. And, that scene is very Spike Lee. But I got to admit, as the movie progresses, maybe it's just because he's trying new things, but it's not the most Spike Lee of movies, you know? I like it. I'm a big fan of it. But, you know, he's on a huge roll now with Black Klansman and the Five Bloods, even going back to Chirac. I hope he keeps it going, man. I'd like to see a Spike Lee movie every year, maybe two.
He can become like Woody Allen. He just cranks them out every year. It'd be awesome.
Why not? I mean, he's pretty prolific. He's been pretty much on that schedule since 1990. Well, gosh, going back, She Gotta Have It was 86. So, and then 88, School Days, 89, Do the Right Thing. So he's been hitting every year or two for a long time now. And he's one of the greats.
He is. I'm very happy that we got to celebrate him in June on Cinemajaw. And I ended up seeing, including the Five Bloods, 4 Spike Lee movies that month. And I'm glad for it because I had some blind spots there.
Good for you, Rye. There's a few I still need to catch up with, and maybe I'll fill in those gaps. We can do Spike Lee again next year.
Yes. That wraps up our retro review of Clockers. We'd like to hear what you think of the movie if you've seen it. And agree, disagree, just got a comment, whatever it is, write us an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. It worked out well here, Matt. We did each get in a summer vacation. I got out to Wisconsin, one state north of Illinois, for a weekend of boating and golfing with some friends. And you got out to Michigan, one state over to the right, a family weekend.
Yeah. My folks live out here. That's where I'm recording, in my dad's office. It's nice, man. A little bit of nature, a little bit of boating, you know, all those good things. We're going to go blueberry picking.
Oh, how exciting. Blueberry picking. Listen to that.
It's fun, man. I wish it could be golf and booze with my buddies, but sometimes you got to do the family vacation stuff.
And just get some R&R in. Recommend that to all the Jawheads.
It's been huge.
So we'll be back next week with a full episode of Cinema Jaw.
You bet. Thanks for listening. See you next week. And until then, I'm Matt Kay.
And I'm Rye the Movie Guy.
And keep on jawing about the movies.